on the Ready Wammo breakfast.
This is the story of an innocent man brought to his knees and killed in the prime of his life.
2 million Cambodians died during the regime of starvation, overwork, and execution.
That is the sound of Rob Hamill rowing there, by the way. The documentary we're looking at today is Brother Number One, now on general release here in New Zealand. Lena Lamont has been and seen it. So have I, actually, last year at the film festival. Morning, Lena.
Morning, Wammo.
Yeah. Now it's on general release, so everyone can go see it. They don't have to turn up at special times at the film
that's
festival.
right. If you missed it last year, there were only a handful of screenings in the festival, weren't there?
Yeah.
Brother Number One is I think, a sensational film. It's all very well that it's a New Zealand-made documentary. That's not the reason that I'm plumping so hard for people to go see it. I think it's, for me personally, the story really resonates. It's about the big picture, the big context, if you will, is the quarter of Cambodia's population, so 2 million people, who were massacred by Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge regime in the late 1970s. Now, for you and I, we were maybe scarcely alive at that time, probably not very, very aware or present to what was going on. But the more I went to Cambodia a few years ago, visited the killing fields, as I'm sure some of our listeners will have done, and visited Tuol Sleng, which is the S21 prison, which was a high school, for crying out loud. And then as the regime took over, they converted it into a torture prison. And as I say, 2 million people, a quarter of your country's population, were massacred over the period of about 4 years. So that's the big picture context for this film. The resonance for New Zealanders is that Rob Hamill, a New Zealander, Olympic rower, and an award-winning rower across the Atlantic and whatnot, not many people will know that the Hamill family's eldest son, Kerry, was on the hippie trail around Vietnam, Cambodia and Thailand in the late 70s, drifted into Cambodian waters, was captured by the Khmer Rouge and tortured and killed at Tuol Sleng. And so this is Rob's personal story in a way, as well as it's being the story of the Cambodian people, to find out what happened to his brother. And this coincides, of course, with, it's taken 30-odd years for the perpetrators of this genocide, really, to be brought to justice in Cambodia.
Yeah.
So we've only just seen, as of last year, the first of probably a handful of trials that will go on with the top leaders of the Khmer Rouge on trial. And
they called them Brother Number 1, 2, 3.
I think there was only Brother Number 1, Brother Number 2, I think. And strictly speaking, Brother Number 1, to be honest, that's the nickname for Pol Pot.
Yeah.
And this film isn't about Pol Pot, although it is about Pol Pot's regime in the way that the Holocaust is about Hitler's regime, if you will. But obviously, with this film, it's a play on the fact that Kerry was Brother Number 1 of the Hamill family of 5 children. And, of course, this is Rob's story, searching for his brother.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But also searching for people who came in contact with his brother as well, yeah?
That's absolutely right. Yes, of course, searching to find out what happened to his brother. And it's didn't you find it was incredibly meaningful in the documentary where Rob goes to Cambodia and speaks to other survivors of the genocide who lost people. I don't know if you'll remember, there's one lady... there's a gentleman who he speaks to who says, well, basically, my mother is the sole survivor in our family. She lost all her brothers and sisters. She lost her husband. She lost most of her children. She lost her parents. And it's extraordinary. He says it's easier for us to recount the list of those who survived than it is to name those who died because there were so many more
numerous.
of them.
Yeah. And there wasn't there quite a chilling moment where he interviewed or talked to a guard.
Yes.
Who may have been in contact with his brother.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And shows him the picture of how Kerry looked in those days, obviously, and says, do you remember this guy? He actually says that to a couple of people. There's the photographer from the prison. The fact that they're Cambodians, or rather the Khmer Rouge, the fact that they documented every single person who came in, and they went to the extent of getting a ridiculous confession out of every single person, sort of like ticking the boxes, the paperwork. These people were destined to be killed anyway. I don't believe, you never hear stories of anybody who manages to convince them, oh no, I'm not actually, a baddie against the regime, an opponent of the regime. So the documentation of the photos and the confessions and everything
and
is
in
extraordinary.
Kerry's confession, there's some humour in there as
well. Yeah.
Funny now.
So that's I don't want people to think this is relentlessly grim.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly it is a grim, sad story. But you're absolutely right. Those, it's a cliche, but it's true. When you've got a documentary like this, those glimmers of human nature and human wit and human strength, I suppose, even when you are being starved and beaten on a daily basis, to be able to concoct a confession that Kerry Hamill obviously knew, this is so ludicrous. They're accusing me of being a CIA spy.
Yeah.
I'll give them what they want to hear.
Yeah. So for all those reasons, go and see this on the big screen.
It's directed by Annie Goldson, who is one of our award-winning New Zealand documentary filmmakers. Rob Hamill makes for a very strong central character, but as I say, the backstory of the history of Cambodia is really compelling as well.
Even if you have a passing interest in this history, we'll put everything that you see perhaps on that pops up very occasionally about these trials that are ongoing on the 6 o'clock news. We'll put everything in context, and you'll be able to understand exactly how that fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So that'd be another good reason.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but it's an incredible history lesson in 2 hours.
Great. Brother number one. Where can you go see it in Auckland?
It'll be on. I'm not entirely sure. I'm fairly sure the Rialto will have it. I can't think quite how wide the release is going to be. Get out there sooner rather than later, and particularly with this rubbish weather, people might as well be going, over the next couple of days. Go this weekend.
Indeed.
But, fantastic film.
Also, check out the film reviews in the Sunday Star Times and lenalamont.wordpress.com. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
The more I hear about some of the things that happened, the more understanding of what took place there. And I want to forgive, but the harder it will be to forgive. And sometimes I feel a real hatred towards me.